Welcome, everyone. My name is Kenzie Luderbach, and I'm the events coordinator at the Office of Sustainability, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Also, if you are here for a Smiley professional event, make sure to scan your ID over at that table over there before you head out. I'd like to start by thanking SGA's Environmental and Sustainability Issues Committee for sponsoring this event, and a big thank you to the Office of Sustainability as well for helping to put on this event. I also want to give a big thank you to our keynote, Dan Terrio, for coming to campus to speak. I'd like to introduce him a little bit first. So for over 25 years, Dan Terrio has inspired countless youth and adults from all walks of life with a story of perseverance, strength, and determination. At the young age of 13, he began his motivational speaking on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dan later went on to serve 2 terms as a national co-president of Unity, the largest American Indian organization in the U.S., while also traveling across the U.S. presenting his inspiring story. Today, Dan is an accomplished, award-winning corporate educational facilitator, a national and TED certified motivational speaker, leadership and cultural development trainer, and he currently works as a diversity and inclusion manager and officer for Milwaukee County. So without further ado, let's give a big hand to Dan.
Thank you. Is it on? Can you all hear me okay? Cool. Well, thank you, Kenzie, for that very nice introduction. And hello, everybody. It is an honor to be here today at UW-Stevens Point. I don't get up this way very often, so it's kind of nice to be home. I grew up not far from here, so it's kind of like a homecoming for me. Before we get into my remarks, just a couple things to point out. First and foremost, you may notice me kind of stationary here at a podium. I'll be looking down. I have notes in front of me. Reason being, I have a stutter. And sometimes in these moments, it peeks out and wants to say hi. And so if you see me kind of looking down a little bit, that's what's going on. It's mostly so I don't have you here the rest of the night, because it will happen. So it's more or less to make sure that we're on time. And lastly, and this one I think is most important, there are things that I'm going to talk about tonight that may invoke an emotion. It may trigger something in you. It may inspire some type of thought in your mind that may invoke an emotion both positively and negatively. In that event that it may become too much, please know that you are able to go step outside, take a moment, do what you have to do, because this is a safe zone. I want to make sure that that is established, just because there are some topics that I will be addressing today that can be a little heavy for some people, and I want to be cognizant of that. So wanted to make sure that I throw that out there before we get started. So again, thank you, UW-Stevens Point, the Office of Sustainability, for this invitation to be here today. And in my language of the Muncie, Delaware people, we say Anishik. We say thank you. I am humbled, very humbled to be here today. Now, I'm not going to lie to you when I say that when I got the invite, and again, I'm humbled and honored to be here, but when I got the invite, I kind of almost said no. And the reason being is I get offers all the time to speak at different events, and sometimes I have to try to find a way to really customize my message to fit what the overall premise of the ask is. The theme of this year kind of threw me for a loop of your Earth Week. The last time I heard about symbiosis was when I was in a high school biology class, and mind you, that was like over 20 years ago. And I'm like, what? I don't talk about science. I don't have a science degree. So before I committed, I did my research. And really, when I looked at the definition of symbiotic relationships, which, by the way, the definition, just to read it out here, is an interconnectivity or interaction between 2 or more species which may or may not be beneficial to each other. That's the definition that I got. So I took a second and just let that absorb, and I'll be damned. Immediately, it started hitting me. I've been traveling this country for almost 25 years, speaking, talking about one's human beingness, which I'm going to get into, and the purpose of our stories. And the more I researched, the more I connected the dots, and the more that the topic didn't really scare me. Instantaneously, it connected me to my roots. Indigenous people have always had a connection to the lands, the animals, the waters, the sky. And like that connection to nature, Indigenous people have always had a connection to each other. You can go to any reservation in the United States of America, and they will treat you like your family. And in my life experiences, when I have traveled the country, going to different communities, even though I did not grow up there, I was welcomed and treated like I was born into that household. Now, furthermore, in Indigenous teachings, they would describe interconnectivity through the teachings of the medicine wheel, which kind of looks like this. You probably have seen this before. I was gifted this from the Little Traverse Bay Band Odawa in Michigan. Now, the medicine wheel, which is sometimes known as the sacred hoop, has been used by generations of various Native American tribes to foster a culture of health and healing. Now, it embodies the four directions, as well as Father Sky, Mother Earth, Spirit Tree, all of which symbolize the dimensions of health and the cycles of life. Now, the medicine wheel can also take different forms. It can be in an artwork, such as an artifact or painting, or it can be a physical construction on the lands. Now, hundreds or even thousands of medicine wheels have been built on Native American lands in North America over the last several centuries. And the movement in the medicine wheel and in the Native American ceremonies is circular, typically clockwise or sunwise direction, as it's referred to. This helps to align with the forces of nature, such as gravity and the rising and the setting of the sun. Now, different tribes interpret the medicine wheel differently. Each of the four directions, north, south, east, or west, it's typically represented by a distinctive color: white, yellow, red, and black, which for some stands for the human races. The directions can also represent the stages of life: birth, youth, adult or elder, and death. The seasons of the year: spring, summer, fall, winter. The aspects of life: the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical. Or the elements of nature: fire or sun, air, water, and earth. And just to even wrap this up too, animals such as your eagle, bear, wolf, buffalo, and many others, depending on the clans of those indigenous tribes. And lastly, the ceremonial plants: tobacco, sweetgrass, sage, and cedar. Now, key piece of this, and this is going to start to make some sense as I'm getting into my message here. An important part of this circle is that it does not break. While our lives have good moments and bad moments, the circle keeps us whole. The relationships you develop that create lasting connections keeps that circle full. Every life experience gets you closer to creating that full circle. And when you make your circle full, you keep going. The circle never breaks. As I'm doing this research and really starting to pull together a message for today, I began thinking about those in my life that have left a lasting impression and shaped who I am and where I am at. These individuals have made me feel in full circle. But even more so, the lessons you learn from these people, both positively and negatively, carry with you. One such positive relationship is a mentor of mine, the late Dorothy Davids. That name ring a bell here at UW-Stevens Point. Dorothy, or Aunt Dot, as she was referred to in our community, instilled in me the power of human beingness. For those of you who don't know who Aunt Dot is, which, especially being here at the university, you definitely want to learn more about her. She was known in our community, was a pioneer in our state, and more specifically, a trailblazer here at UW-Stevens Point. Aunt Dot was the first minority to graduate from UWSP. She was a leader in multicultural education and social justice. In fact, your multicultural center is named after her. She used to describe human beingness as what makes you passionate, what makes you unique, what makes you real. It's your overall spirit. Human beingness defines our character and is shaped by the journeys we take in our lives. Human beingness is also shaped by those relationships you establish and sustain, and furthermore, who you choose to surround yourself with. In turn, human beingness is your authenticity. Now, human beingness, as mentioned before, I've been doing this for about 25 years. Human beingness has been a key practice in my work. As our human beingness shapes who we are as people and what we bring to work, school, and life every single day, I have taken the opportunity to get to know every person I come across, understanding who they are, what their character is, what their journey is, building that connectivity with them. Because of that, when I travel and meet these people, many of them young people, coming back several years later as adults, they remember me. And I remember those things. I have had the fortunate opportunity to travel this country, meeting people from all walks of life, hearing their stories, their journeys, and what makes them who they are, their human beingness. Out of all those stories, there is one that stands out. A person's human beingness. A boy I once knew. I knew a boy that was born to a German mother and a Native American father. He was born in a time where cultural differences were intended to keep his parents apart. In his community, it was frowned upon to date someone out of their race. Despite all of those obstacles, this boy's parents stayed together. This boy was born in a time where there was widespread poverty in his community. Many tribal members struggled to find work. Jobs were non-existent. These community members had to decide whether or not to keep the lights on or to put food on the table. Many tribal members would leave their tribal communities and go to metropolitan cities seeking work, including this boy's father. This boy's mother would work 2 jobs to support the family. This boy would spend countless hours in time with his grandparents. Despite the financial troubles that were going on in the home, they never made it known to this boy. At the age of 4, this boy realized he was different. It was the first time he experienced racial profiling. This boy, his brother, were in a shopping cart, being pushed by this boy's father. Out of the corner of his eye, this boy's father noticed a man following him. After several minutes, the boy's father had enough. He turned around and said, "Why are you following me? What do you want?" The man asked, "Are you going to buy something?" The man then peered at this boy and his brother in the shopping cart, both fair-skinned with blonde hair, and asked, "Whose kids are those?" To which the father responded, "They're mine." The man then responded, "But they don't look like you." It was implied that this boy's father kidnapped his own children. This was the last time that this boy's father ever went shopping with the family, out of fear of profiling. This boy's father raised his sons to walk in two worlds, the native world and the non-native world. As the years went on, the community would experience an economic boom with the introduction of gaming. Jobs became plentiful. Families were reunited. People were lifted out of poverty. Those changes began to happen in this boy's home. His father was home more often. But it's at the age of 5 when this boy noticed changes in his own home. It was at the age of 5 where he experienced abuse for the first time. His father would be verbally and physically abusive to his mother and would eventually move to this boy and his brother. This boy needed a safe place to thrive and grow and not be afraid. He found that in school. He went to school looking for a safe place, an opportunity to learn and grow. It was there he would think about his dreams, what he hoped to accomplish. But the safety of the school began to diminish, and the feeling of being different followed. He was bullied by kids from his own community because he was fair-skinned. He didn't fit in with the white kids because he was from a reservation. He was too white to be native and too native to be white. His escape was learning, dreaming, hoping for a brighter future. He confided in his teachers, who became mentors and safety for him. But despite having that, he really had no safe space. He would go home and be abused and go to school and be bullied. As he grew older, he found himself coping in a negative way. Began hanging out with the wrong crowd, which then showed him the deep and dark road of addiction and peer pressure. At the age of 10 years old, he tried drugs for the first time. Tried alcohol. He became depressed. At a young age, he began a destructive path. This boy needed a wake-up call. He got it in the form of a car accident. At the age of 13 years old, the van that this boy was in, along with his mother and his brother, was struck by a train. The van that they were in was dragged a half a mile down the tracks, with all three ejected from the vehicle. And moments later, the van burst into flames. His family was broken, but miraculously, all three survived. It was at this point that this boy realized he had a second chance at life. But he had to face facts that he would never live a normal life like his peers. You see, in the accident, due to the extent of his injuries, he was committed to a wheelchair. Unknown if he'd ever walk again. Through his recovery, he thought about his life. What got him to where he's at now? Where does he go from here? What does he do? In that time frame, he felt compelled to speak and began sharing his human beingness with people. He developed relationships with people that lifted him up and gave him the knowledge that allowed him to achieve his goals. From his wheelchair, he was taken to a local youth center on his reservation where he spoke to 20 youth. He didn't know what the words were going to be. He opened his mouth and the words came out. From that moment, he made a decision to spend every moment of his life at service to others. Because you see, at that point, the people that rallied around him motivated him to pass that on to other people. In addition to this goal, he made a vow to walk again. And 6 months later, he did just that. At 14, guided by those positive forces in his life, this boy immersed himself in his community. He began mentoring with 2 elders from his community who taught him how to public speak and how to educate on such topics as leadership development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. He got involved at a national level with the largest American Indian youth organization in the country. At 16, being elected to their national executive board, he was appointed to national commissions of the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Organization of Youth Safety. He also began traveling the country, sharing his human beingness with others. At the age of 17, he graduated from high school, something he did not think would happen. And 2 months later, he was elected the national president of that youth organization. He then moved to Washington, D.C. to work on behalf of the organization, while also traveling this country as a motivational speaker. At the age of 21, he left public policy, left Washington, D.C., and ended up completing a bachelor's degree, the first person in his family to do so. This boy, now a man, would go on to work with youth in his community. He would go on to be an active volunteer in his community, eventually heading into careers in organizational development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. He would work in local government. He would take his journey in his human beingness to the largest stage, TED, delivering a TED Talk at the age of 34. He would also face his truth at 36 when he issued a Facebook post revealing his most vulnerable secret, that he was gay. The post garnered local attention as he became the first leader in his community to publicly out himself. His announcement paved the way for young people struggling with their own journey, their own gender identity, their own sexual orientation, to see themselves reflected in positions of leadership. This boy, despite everything that has been thrown at him, still stands tall and proud, knowing who he is and embracing every element of his life. But most of all, using every element of his life to help benefit the lives of others. I know this boy. I know him well, because this boy is me. Why is this so important? Because it's mine. I lived it. Nobody can take it from me. I stand before you today fully recognizing everything the boy in me had to endure made me the man I am today. I embrace my human beingness. I represent my story every single day. It shapes who I am, how I think, what I value, and how I see the world. Most of all, it shapes the relationships that I have and has sustained. I surround myself with people who embrace and love my human beingness. People who see it as a strength and not a weakness. People who work to make me better and in turn allow me to make the lives of others better and the communities I serve better. As Indigenous people, our culture, traditions, and history has carried on through the art of storytelling. Through our oral traditions, you can see the resiliency, the strength, perseverance, and the interconnectivity of the first inhabitants of this land. The same goes with our journeys through life. My story is like that of many of you. My story is like that of our college community here. My story is like that of our more global community. We take the gravel and the dirt and we make a pearl. We create beauty out of something so messy. At the end of the day, it makes us real, it makes us better, and it makes us driven to see the good. When bad happens to us, we make a choice to either be defined by it or guided by it. My friends, there is resiliency through trauma. There is light at the end. There's light in times of darkness. When we bring every ounce of ourselves to the relationships we have, the more people can see who we truly are. The more others, those relationships can be that light in our time of darkness. For how different we may seem, we are all interconnected. Either you or someone you know has experienced hardship, struggle, pain, and have overcome. And some of you may have not. Empathy plays a big part in this. I had a lot of people in my life that had no idea what I was going through, but they walked that journey with me. They stood by me. Even to this day, they stood by me. When we walk in someone's shoes, we develop the empathy, the respect, and the trust to address the things that we differ on, and that binds people together. In my own life, these moments have taught me so many lessons. But it's also brought me relationships that have stood the test of time and directed me on a path that I never imagined I would have gone on. So, mentioned before, travel this country as a motivational speaker, and I currently sit as the Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Milwaukee County. My appointment to this position, which I oversee the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts for 4,000 employees, made me the highest ranking Native American in Milwaukee County history. I don't take that for granted. I don't take for granted that I get to do this work every single day in the largest county in the state of Wisconsin. For generations, Indigenous people and LGBTQ plus people fought, and I say that lightly, but I'm going to say it loudly, fought to have a seat at the table and a voice in societal change. A voice like mine has not been heard in our areas of government, and now a voice like mine has a seat at the table. I stand every single day on the shoulders of ancestors whose pursuit towards a more equitable community paved the way for me to be here and to use my voice for good. You were given a voice for a reason. Use it. I also remembered the two women that came into my life that helped me find that voice, that knew even before I did that this is where I was supposed to be. As mentioned before, Dorothy Davids, Dr. Ruth Godinez, two seasoned social justice educators from two polar opposite ends of life, trained me at 14 years old to do diversity, equity, and inclusion work in exchange for tips on how to stand up in front of people and speak. They knew before I did And when I was sworn in, I felt them. That's the power of relationships. They saw something in this 14-year-old boy. And when you find relationships like that, you sustain them. You hold on to them. You never forget them. But the lessons that they teach you, don't forget those either. Some of those lessons that they taught me, Daniel, which they were the only ones that were allowed to call me that. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget your journey. Don't forget your voice. But don't forget the relationships that made you you. The people who came along with you become part of that journey. Your essence, your very spirit touches everyone every single day. Your human beingness and your journey is just a part of that book of life. That circle that never breaks. Living and sharing your human beingness with others moves us towards building interconnected relationships and making your circle whole. Making your circle full. But part of this, and I would be remiss if I did not say this, but part of that in full circle is protecting your inner peace and practicing self-love. Self-love means that you accept yourself fully, treat yourself with kindness and respect, and nurture and grow your well-being. Self-love encompasses not only how you treat yourself, but also your thoughts and feelings about yourself. So, when you try to conceptualize self-love, you can try to imagine what you would do for yourself, how you would talk to yourself, how you'd feel about yourself that reflects love and concern. And when you do that for yourself, you convey that to others and they treat you with respect. Finding yourself means soul searching the peaks and valleys of your life. We all have them. And seeing them as a necessary part of your growth. Having the ability to self-reflect means being comfortable spending your time with yourself, barren of shame and judgment, to work on you, your insecurities, your strengths, your flaws, and the valuable contributions that you have to offer yourself and others. That ability to truly find happiness and love in yourself makes you more confident and rest assured in your love and compassion for relationships in your life and in others. My friends, the greatest relationship that you will ever have is the relationship you have with yourself. Your stories, your journey, your being. We can only be good for others when we are good to ourselves. It starts with us. And this, my friends, is what keeps your circle full. Now, in true storyteller fashion, I know a person who has a story. I know a person who embraces their human beingness and shares it with others. I know a person who sustains symbiotic relationships and works to strengthen them as a benefit of our overall well-being. I know a person who looks at others for the journey they have taken and the character they possess. I know a person who brings their authentic and whole selves in life every single day. I know a person who loves every ounce of themselves, even the messy parts. I know a person who lives a life in full circle. I know this person. They're sitting right in front of me. This person is you. Again, thank you so much for being here tonight. I will be here a little bit after if you want to come up and talk. But till next time I see you, thank you again. And as we say in our language, Anishik, thank you.